All right, everybody, let's get started. I know you are all busy and want to stay on top of things, but you've got to keep learning, and that's what we're here to help you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're diving into a really interesting and I'd say quite important topic, Citrix, virtual apps, and desktops.
You know, it's funny you should say that. I was just having a conversation about this the other day.
Really?
Yeah, it's really relevant.
Absolutely, especially these days.
So I'm super excited to dig in, and, we've got a bunch of really cool exam prep materials that you sent over,
Yay.
practice questions, explanations. And, our mission here isn't just to, teach to the test or help people pass an exam.
Of course.
Is to really give you the practical insights that you need to manage and secure a Citrix environment.
Exactly. And I think what's really valuable about this kind of approach is that we're not just looking at the what, but the why.
Yeah.
Right. So not just what's the answer to this multiple choice question, but why is that the answer? And how does that apply to my real world scenario as someone who's either studying or working with Citrix?
That's so key. And, I think that's something that a lot of people miss when they're studying for these exams.
Oh, for sure.
It's like they get so caught up in memorizing the answers
Yeah.
that they don't actually understand the concepts.
Absolutely. Rote memorization will only get you so far.
Right, exactly.
You need to understand those underlying principles.
Yeah. And so that's what we're really going to try to do today.
Absolutely.
So why don't we jump right in?
Sounds good.
Let's start with security, which is, I think, a top concern for anyone who's working with virtual apps and desktops.
Couldn't agree more.
Your materials highlight the difference between single-factor and two-factor authentication, so 2FA.
Right.
Now, most of us are familiar with passwords, right? That's
Yeah.
the single factor is something you know.
Something you know exactly.
But why is adding that second factor such a game changer for security?
So the real impact here is the significant reduction of risk, and the materials you provided really underscore this point. Two-factor authentication combines something, like your password with something you have like a code sent to your phone or a security key.
Right.
And this additional layer is incredibly effective at preventing unauthorized access.
I mean, think about it. It's like having two locks on your door instead of one.
Exactly. Even if someone manages to pick the first lock, that second lock is still there to stop them.
Right. And in the digital world, that second lock can be the difference between, someone getting access to your data and them being completely locked out.
Absolutely. And we're not just talking about a small improvement here.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that implementing 2FA can block over 99.9% of account takeover attacks.
Wow, that's huge.
It's a massive security boost that gives you peace of mind knowing that your systems are protected.
And I think that's especially important when we're talking about virtual apps and desktops because, these environments often contain sensitive data.
Absolutely. You're dealing with applications and data that are critical to your business.
Right. And so you need to make sure that you have those strong security measures in place.
You got that additional layer of protection isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have in today's threat landscape.
I completely agree. So we've got a secure entry point now. What about keeping everything running smoothly? How do you even start to monitor the health of a Citrix environment?
Well, this brings up a crucial aspect, visibility.
Visibility.
Right. You need to be able to see what's happening within your Citrix environment to ensure it's performing optimally.
And how do you gain that visibility?
Well, your materials point to Citrix Director as the primary tool for performance monitoring, and they are spot on.
Okay, so Citrix Director.
Yes, think of it as a central command center that gives you a real-time view of your entire Citrix deployment.
Okay, so like a dashboard.
Exactly, a comprehensive dashboard that provides you with a wealth of information about your environment.
So what kind of information does it give you? What are the key data points that you should be looking at?
Well, it gives you a really broad overview of your operations. It tracks user sessions, so you can see who is logged in, what they are doing.
Okay.
It monitors the performance of your application, so you can tell if they are launching quickly and running smoothly.
Right.
And it keeps a close eye on resource utilization, so you can see how much CPU memory and disk space your servers are using.
So you can see if any of your servers are getting overloaded.
Exactly. You can see if a particular machine is struggling under a heavy load and take steps to address it.
I can see how that would be incredibly helpful, especially if you're trying to troubleshoot performance issues.
Absolutely. If users are complaining about slow application performance, you can use Director to see if the problem lies with a specific user session, a particular application, or if the underlying infrastructure is under stress.
So it can help you pinpoint the source of the problem.
Precisely. It's like having X-ray vision into your Citrix environment.
Okay, so we've got Citrix Director for real-time monitoring, But what about being more proactive?
Hmm.
What about identifying problems before they even impact users?
Ah, now you're talking.
Right. That's the dream.
Exactly. And that's where Citrix Application Delivery Management, or ADM, comes in.
ADM.
Yes, ADM takes a more proactive approach to managing your Citrix environment.
Okay, so how does it do that?
Well, it's designed to identify potential performance bottlenecks and security vulnerabilities before they become major issues.
So it's like a preventative maintenance tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's constantly analyzing your environment, looking for patterns and anomalies that could indicate a problem down the line.
So it's like having a canary in a coal mine.
That's a great analogy.
Right. It can warn you of danger before it's too late.
Exactly. It can alert you if a server is running low on disk space or if an application is consuming an unusual amount of memory.
And that gives you time to address the issue before it causes a disruption.
Precisely, the goal is to minimize downtime and ensure a smooth and seamless user experience.
So ADM is all about being proactive. But what happens when those proactive measures don't catch everything and you do encounter a performance issue?
Well, in those cases, you need to roll up your sleeves and do some troubleshooting.
And what's the best tool for that?
Citrix Director is still your go-to tool for in-depth troubleshooting.
Okay, so we're back to Director.
Exactly. Remember all that detailed historical and real-time data it collects?
Right.
Well, that information is incredibly valuable when you're trying to diagnose a performance problem.
So if users are reporting slow application performance, you can use Director to see if there's a correlation with high CPU usage on a particular server or excessive network latency.
Exactly. You can drill down into individual user sessions, see what applications they are running, and monitor the resource consumption on the backend servers.
So it's like having a detective's toolkit for your Citrix environment.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so you've used Director to identify the problem. It's a consistently high CPU usage. What are some practical steps you can take to resolve it?
Well, one of the most effective steps is to adjust the resource settings for your virtual machines.
Okay, so basically giving them more CPU and memory.
Exactly. If a machine is consistently running out of resources, increasing its allocation can often make a significant difference.
Makes sense. And the materials we have here specifically mention that simply restarting servers or rebuilding the entire infrastructure are less ideal solutions.
Yes, because those are more like Band-Aid solutions.
They don't address the root cause.
Right. Restarting a server might provide temporary relief, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem.
And rebuilding the entire infrastructure is a massive undertaking.
It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Right, so adjusting the VM resources is a much more targeted and effective approach.
Exactly. It's about addressing the root cause of the problem.
Okay, now even with proactive monitoring and targeted troubleshooting, there will be times when you encounter issues that are harder to diagnose,
Of course.
like those intermittent problems that seem to appear and disappear randomly.
Right. This can be tricky.
So what do you do in those situations?
Well, that's where logging becomes crucial.
Logging?
Yes, having detailed records of system activity can be a lifesaver when you're trying to track down those elusive issues.
And what kind of logs are we talking about here?
In a Citrix environment, Citrix event logs are your primary source of information.
Okay, so these are logs that are specific to Citrix.
Exactly. They contain a wealth of information about the health and performance of your Citrix components.
So what kind of information can you find in these logs?
Well, you'll find detailed entries about errors, warnings, informational events spanning various Citrix services and components.
So it's like a history book of everything that's happened in your Citrix environment.
Precisely. And when you encounter a weird problem, you can go back and examine these logs to see if you can find any clues about what might have caused it.
Okay, so Citrix Director, Citrix ADM, Citrix Event Logs. These are all essential tools for managing a Citrix environment,
They are. And, another trend that we're seeing is the move to the cloud.
right? Everyone's talking about the cloud these days.
Absolutely. And Citrix Cloud is becoming increasingly popular for deploying virtual apps and desktops.
So what are the advantages of using Citrix Cloud?
Well, one of the biggest advantages is that it reduces your reliance on local hardware.
Okay, so instead of having to buy and maintain all those servers yourself, you can let Citrix handle it.
Exactly. Citrix manages the underlying infrastructure for you, which can save you a lot of money and hassle.
And it also makes it easier to scale your environment up or down as needed.
Precisely, you don't have to worry about buying new servers or decommissioning old ones.
So it's a lot more flexible.
Absolutely. And it also frees up your IT staff to focus on more strategic initiatives.
So Citrix Cloud sounds pretty great, but what if you're thinking about making the switch? Where do you even begin?
Well, the most important thing is to do a thorough evaluation of your existing network and infrastructure.
Okay, so before you even start migrating anything to the cloud.
Exactly. You need to make sure that your network can handle the increased traffic and that your infrastructure is compatible with Citrix Cloud.
And what are some of the key things you should be looking at during this evaluation?
Well, you need to assess your internet bandwidth capacity, network, latency, firewall configurations, and overall connectivity.
Okay, so basically everything that could impact the performance of your Citrix environment in the cloud.
Exactly. You want to identify any potential bottlenecks or limitations before you start the migration process.
So you don't end up with a bunch of unhappy users complaining about slow performance.
Precisely. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
Right. And speaking of being safe, we can't forget about security.
Absolutely. Security is always a top concern, especially when you're moving to the cloud.
And what are some of the key security considerations for Citrix Cloud?
Well, one of the most important things is to implement strong user authentication methods.
Like multi-factor authentication.
Exactly. MFA is essential for protecting your data and applications in the cloud.
Right, because even if someone manages to steal a user's password, they still won't be able to access their account without that second factor.
Exactly. So it adds an extra layer of security. Absolutely.
And that's what it's all about.
It is.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.